So what are the significant things I learned along the way? I learned about complex systems integration and prime contractorship. They're not the same thing. I'll explain that in a minute. But they sort of go together. I learned very early with large organizations, you have to have a strategic framework, a vision, and a set of objectives in terms of where you're going. You have to figure out how to deal with the vagaries of buying companies and selling companies. And there are vagaries. I mean, there is no absolute right way to value or buy or know about a company you're going to buy. And then I already talked about continuous learning and valuing diversity, which is really inclusion. So, systems integration is really taking three views: the functional view, physical view, and operational view, and creating a solution for a customer. It's basically an engineering process, discipline, that starts you all the way from requirements and develops eventually a solution for the customer. It's applied in development and testing of systems that consist of multiple subsystems. That's what really system integration is. So it's not a simple system, it's not a simple black box, but in the case of like what we had on Merlin, which was an anti-submarine warfare, that system had somewhere in the order of 250 boxes, black boxes, all integrated to perform a mission, which was to find submarines. And then prime contractorship is more a management discipline of structured processes that manage cost, schedule, and risk. And in those days, we were doing it fixed price. A lot of people do it on a cost-plus basis now. I sort of kind of would contend it takes a little bit of the edge off. So when you look at the system integration, prime contracting process, it has to do with things like capturing requirements, integrating and testing the system. But the most important piece, which always, by the way, you will find in all the elements of any business that you run, is what I call system analysis. That's probably the most fundamental piece. Most things that go wrong, nobody's done an analytical basis of either the system design, the business model, or whatever. They sort of done it by kind of like what I call brochuremanship. Is I'll have one of these, that goes like going to the grocery store. I have one of these. I fill up the market basket. And in the end, I still don't know what I'm going to cook when I get home, right? That is that's probably one of the biggest flaws of most programs that are run, is that there isn't adequate system analysis that analytically backs kind of why the system ought to work the way it is, or why the business model ought to work the way it is. And of course, integration and test always needs to involve customers. And we did one really interesting thing in IBM. The system engineers that designed the system, they had to integrate and test it. Because a lot of these compartmental processes don't work real well if you don't have ownership from phase to phase. So we kind of believed in the womb to tomb thought process. And then I talk about having a schedule management obsession, where you focus on critical path analysis of schedules, network dependencies, what we call monthly earned value. And the only way I can kind of talk about schedule obsession is kind of only one way. You know that if a program or a business model or product is going to be 1 year late, it's going to cost more, right? Absolutely, positively, standing army, no doubt. There's nothing that goes longer that costs less. There's no paradigm like that. Never met one, never will. So the idea in terms of schedule obsession is you sign up for something, you get your engineers focused around the schedule, you get that schedule done, and if you have to spend money to make that schedule, I would guarantee you that you will spend less than if you let that program slip. So, big dig, right? You know, it's supposed to be 4 years, it's 8 years. Are you surprised that it went from 8 billion to 13 billion? Start standing army. You know, you don't know how to shut it off. So, schedule obsession in terms of project management is absolutely essential. And then most prime contractorships have subcontractors. And most people take subcontractors and put them under procurement, which is the worst thing in the world you can do, because subcontractors are your partners. If they fail, you will fail. So you need a different thought process in terms of managing subcontractors. They need to become part of your system design, system integration, system management team. A little different construct, but I would say that majority of people first want to put subcontractors into procurement. Procurement people buy pencils, paper, and erasers. Maybe a little bit more sophisticated than that, but they don't build systems. And then you always ought to have a risk management process, right? I mean, and by the way, the notion of a risk register is not that you have a risk register. The notion of a risk register is that you keep asking yourself, have I done anything about it? So the real value in a risk register is what you have in terms of an action plan and whether people are doing anything about mitigating your risks. On this program that I had, which was $5.5 billion, I had a $100 million contingency budget. A lot of money, right? $100 million is like probably 100 people for 10 years or so. So you kind of say, how do I burn all this? Because it's a project not so much in materials, but in people. Well, we burned all $100 million. And that $100 million allowed us in contingency to deliver that $5.5 billion project on time, all 45 helicopters, and we made $350 million. Not too shabby. And at the very end, then you ought to help your management team have some IT tools. You don't start building a project around IT tools. You build a project, and then you figure out what are the IT tools you need, either to help schedule, to help risk registers, to help design CAD systems, etc. But you don't start the other way around. You don't start with a set of IT tools and build a project around it. So we spent on the Merlin project about $50 million in IT tools to support the project team. And when the project team needed something, we gave them IT tools, but we didn't hand them IT tools to use.